Hello, everyone, and welcome to our master class today on Beyond Numbers, Measuring DEI Impact. My name is Gabrielle Rafi, and I'm calling in from Baltimore, Maryland. I see a few people are listing in the chat where they're calling in from. It seems like we've got folks from all around the country, which is very exciting. Today, we will be diving into how data can play a pivotal role in inclusion work. So we'll be exploring how to select meaningful metrics that truly align with your organizational goals, and we'll focus on interpreting and communicating these insights effectively. So by the end of the session, hopefully you'll have some actionable strategies that you can bring back to your organizations to measure and share the real impact of your DEI initiatives. So I'll start just by quickly introducing myself with a Pecha Kucha, so I'll try to keep it less than 1 minute. One quote that I really love to live by here by Mary Oliver is keep some room in your heart for the unimaginable. So here are the things that give me life and energy and help me with doing this work. It's the community that I am a part of, my family, my dog, being in nature, that really help to ground me in this work and give me the positivity to be able to move forward in helping communities and organizations, building inclusive workplaces. So I've been doing this work for over a decade, and what I really love about this work is helping leaders and teams unlock the potential of what inclusion can look like in their workplace and really create meaningful change. So next slide. A little bit about Solution Consulting Co. We are a consulting services where we offer a variety of offers to our clients from training to development to assessing where your organization is at, both from a DEI perspective, but also strategic planning. So we do a lot of strategic planning for organizations, and it's very action oriented, as you'll see today in what we do. We really try to allow organizations to be able to take the strategic plan and act on it and implement it. And so we work through that with a variety of different clients from all different sectors. We have a lot of different expertise on our team, from education to healthcare to environment to engineering. So Hannah just put in the chat, if you're interested in learning more about our services, you are welcome to schedule a one-on-one chat with us to see how we might be able to support your organization. Next slide. So I mentioned this earlier, but our learning objectives today are to really dive into data and what data means in assessing inclusion at your organization, what do metrics look like, and how we can start to select those meaningful measures. So we'll start to look at a few different strategies to understand both qualitative and quantitative metrics that can align with the organization's diversity and inclusion goals. And then we'll be doing some action planning where we go into breakout groups, and we'll be doing a few case studies to try to understand how we can interpret and communicate that data effectively for all different areas of the organization. Next slide. So as always, we start with our group agreements, AEIOU, which are ask questions, engage fully, integrate new information, open your mind to diverse viewpoints, and utilize what you learn. I always love to focus on the utilize what you learn. You'll have a participant guide today. And like I said, we'll be doing some actionable things that hopefully you can bring back to your organization and utilize what you learn. Next slide. All right, so a part of our warm welcome today is a quick check-in, and feel free to use the chat to provide your answer. You're also welcome to come off of mute. We'll probably have a few minutes for a few folks to chat. What challenges have you faced or maybe anticipate facing in collecting accurate DEI data? And I can share just a quick thing that we're going through with a client is there's a lot of people who are leaving the organization and coming into the organization. And so capturing an understanding of where people are at any given point of time and the accuracy of it based off of who is in and out of the organization. All right, I see Vanessa, you have your hand raised.
Hi, I'm Vanessa. I'm from the Family Service Center. I am the Director of Community Engagement, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. The biggest challenge that I would say for our organization around this is a new role for myself and for this organization. Well, not for myself, but for this organization. And so it was part of like a strategic plan that had come up in 2019 or 2020 rather. And so just I think trying to figure out one, launching DEI initiatives. I've been launching many things, but it's also like wrapping around like folks' head that it's not just quantitative data, like it's really about the cultural shift that happens. And really trying to like qualify that and say it in the most accurate and understanding way for people to grasp. I think that's probably the most difficult issue that we've faced. And so some things that I've done have been just like measuring with feedback and different things, but I'm looking for more, I guess, tangible ways on how to show the shift in attitude and changes and things like that.
Thanks, Vanessa. I think that's a common problem that we experience in in our work, and I think that that's something that we'll definitely be touching on today. So thanks for sharing. I see we also have a few folks who have participated in the chat. Someone said privacy concerns, setting metrics and goals that capture the diversity of communities that you're working with, lack of courage and buy-in from DEI leaders, collecting international data, and the capacity to collect data. Great. These are all really important things that we are going to be learning more about today. So I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Yinka, to introduce herself and take us through our learning portion.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Yinka Jertutu. As I said in the chat, I currently reside in Atlanta, Georgia. Didn't see anyone from Atlanta, but I did see someone from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I used to live in Milwaukee. So also shout out to the Midwest. But one quote that I live by is there's no passion to be found playing small and settling for a life that is less than the one that you're living. And so I found it's important to design your life, to not adopt a one size fits all um, kind of design for your life. And I have had the ability to have a wonderful family and to really get grounded within what's important to me, which includes like health and wellness, as Gabrielle mentioned, being able to support and lead great organizations that are passionate about DI work and elevating all people. And so I definitely have really enjoyed my work with Solution Consulting Co. And I feel like this work of designing your life is an ongoing process. And so definitely want to just impart that to you of the importance of looking at your life and realizing that you are the author of that. And so we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So today we're going to be talking about data as mentioned. And from our perspective, we have walked into rooms before and talked to leaders, as some of you mentioned in the chat, and had some resistance or had some disbelief regarding some of the concerns around DEI or some of the opportunities. And we have definitely seen a turning point when we have had the opportunity to present data. And so data is a game changer. Data has the ability to completely change the minds, not just of leaders, but also staff members, other stakeholders like community members as well. And so data is a very powerful tool with regards to DEI work. And so there's a lot of reasons why you should use data. I know there was mention of, trying to show impact. And so when you have strong data, you can track progress over time and show how your interventions are improving, or in some cases not improving. And then that gives a great sign that you need to find new or different interventions. One thing that's super critical is connecting to the organizational goals. And this truly, I think, is a major um, attractive element for leaders. And so if you know within your organization, your leadership is very focused on retention or employee engagement, or any type of area that's connected to your strategic plan or strategic goals, a great starter is to consider what data that you can link to those organizational goals or strategies that will definitely capture the intentions and the thoughts of the leaders. It supports the lived experience of the staff and the community, right? And so those communities, those groups that you're intending to support or help to improve their experiences, you want to make sure that the data is centered around them and is reflective of their experiences. It promotes transparency. There's accountability as you are tracking data over time. And hopefully it also decreases confusion. We'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. And then lastly, it ensures long-term sustainability and consistency. And so the key is a lot of times there's thoughts around, how do I get the resources? How do I get the finances to support the DI work? But if you can get the data to tell the story for you, then that can be a powerful element to be able to support the need for further data and resources. We can go to the next slide. And so these are just a couple steps that we'd like for you to consider as you think about how to best utilize data for DI appropriately. Oftentimes we find that well-meaning DI strategists or those that are working and supporting DI work may shuffle these up a little bit, and this order is very intentional. And so first, you really want to clarify your data needs. So what we mean here is you want to understand your organization's positioning, where is leadership focus, where are their objectives, and then, of course, as I mentioned previously, you want to try to link your greater organization goals and objectives to the data that you are gathering. You want to also understand what data is available to you. So you don't want to get super excited about, I'm going to capture this data, and then that data can't even be captured by your organization, right? So you want to do some digging to see what is the data that's available to you and what data will be most compelling for the work that you're trying to move forward with. Secondly, now knowing that data, you want to assemble the right team, right? And so if you are seeking to gain buy-in from your leadership team, it would be great to have someone who could be a champion for you on that leadership team that's involved in the team that's supporting the data. The groups or the communities that you're intending to improve, it would be great to have representatives or multiple representatives from those groups on that data team to also help you to look at and consider the data, because they can often see things or pull out things that you might not necessarily think of, right? And so really want to be very intentional about the team that you put together, and that team should hopefully be the same team that is helping to support this data work throughout the process, right? Next, you want to verify the sources. And so this speaks to going a little bit deeper to make sure that your data is going to be strong, that it's going to be accurate. one of the things that can be most damaging is getting in front of a leadership team and having them poke holes in your data. And I can tell you, I have been there. It's not fun. And it definitely damages your credibility, right? When you have data that you feel is accurate and then you go in to present it and you find out that there's holes or limitations or exceptions that you weren't ready for. So you want to do a lot of work on the front end to make sure that your data is strong and then it's accurate. And we're going to spend some time talking about this in the presentation, but we want to make sure that you are communicating your findings in a compelling way. Many times you do all this great work with data and then you go to present it and it's very overwhelming, it's complex, your listener can't really take in the information, and so it's not able to have the impact that you would like it to have. And then lastly, you want to track progress over time, right? This is the power of data, to be able to say, hey, we've been tracking this metric over the course of a year or a couple years, and we're seeing, improvements with these multiple interventions, or we've seen that it's improved and then it decreased. And so now we're digging into that. And so you really want to make sure that you have data that you can track over time. Many times systems that are gathering the data may change. And so you want to just try to get as much accurate information on the longevity of that data to ensure that you're successful in that. Go to the next slide. And so this is just a slide that speaks to what are the questions that you should be asking, right? So when you are implementing data, right, like there are questions that you need to consider as you're thinking about it. So are these the right interventions? Is this the right data? Are we implementing this correctly? As you're measuring this, some things to consider is what data will you collect? At what frequency will you collect this data? How do you know that this is the right data, right? And so you want to make sure that you are thinking through these questions and additional questions as you go through this particular life cycle of data. As you're learning, you want to be thinking about, are we seeing the outcomes we're expecting to see? Why or is how, for whom, under what conditions is this all taking place? And so you want, again, to be very thoughtful at every single point of this work and in reviewing the data to make sure that it is accurate and that it is helpful for where you're going. And then lastly, this is the adjust portion, right? Is this working? What do we need to change? What do we need to stay focused on? What may we need to scale because it's actually working and we can improve upon it. And so it's just important these are just some thoughts on questions that you can consider as you're working through implementing, measuring, learning, and adjusting. All right, we can go to the next slide. All right, and so now we're going to dig into different types of data. And so you all may have heard about this before. We've got qualitative data, which is often very descriptive. This is the data that you're going to gather in interviews and focus groups and open-ended feedback, even just in observing. And then lastly, which often gets quite a bit more of a focus, is the quantitative data, which tends to be more numerical, tends to be more statistical, right? And so these are objective insights such as surveys, demographic data, and retention data. And so often we'll see that there may be more of a focus on one than the other. And we want to encourage you to focus on both. So both are absolutely important. And what's great about qualitative and quantitative data is that they can be used to make your case even stronger. And so what I mean by that is it's often very helpful to start with quantitative data, right? Doing a survey, or if there's an existing survey that your organization already has, including additional questions in there that will help you to get the information that you need. And so many times people will get these quantitative data results and they'll run with it. Oh, these are our issues. We need to just move forward with this. And that often is not telling the full story, right? And so when you think you know the answer, that is when you can follow up with qualitative data, actually sitting down with the individuals that you are needing more answers from and that you've seen different findings within your quantitative data, you can sit down with them and dig deeper to truly understand what is happening in the situation. And so I'll give you an example. I remember looking at the data set for an organization, and there was one particular department that happened to have really high turnover, right? And so immediately, the thought is, okay, we need to potentially focus on that department. They must have an issue specifically within that particular department, or excuse me, within that particular department section, if you will. And so we went and spoke to the individuals in that department section, and come to find out that their leader within that department section had been in and out of work for personal reasons, and a lot of work had fallen on that particular staff. And as a result, many of them could not handle the work, and so they were leaving. And so within a few months of that leader coming back on and being able to do that full-time work and get back into it, the staff and the turnover decreased and everything stabilized out, right? And so we wouldn't have known that if we hadn't gone in, had the conversations, dug deeper, really got to the root of what the issue was, versus immediately just the quantitative data didn't fully give us the answer to what was happening within that particular section. And so it's really important to make sure that you are utilizing both streams of data. In this particular example, we use quantitative and then qualitative, but it can be used either way. You can start with qualitative and then also do quantitative data to go deeper. But the key is to make sure that you're utilizing both to get the full understanding of what's happening. We can go to the next slide. And then the next differentiator we like to talk about with data is leading and lagging indicators. And so leading and lagging indicators are both necessary as you think about the DEI metrics that you might want to use within your organization, along with qualitative and quantitative. So leading indicators are typically predictive measures. So they provide early signs of whether you're on track to meet your goals, right? So they offer real-time feedback on actions and processes that can be adjusted to achieve your final outcomes. So this could be employee training, this could be mentorship program participation, this could be employee engagement with DEI initiatives. And in contrast, lagging indicators are more outcome-based. So they actually are more backwards looking, right? They reflect the results of efforts that have been implemented, right? They're often retrospective and measure the achievement of the end goal, such as demographics, promotion rates, retention and turnover rates, pay equity, and employee satisfaction scores. So as you think about how do I actually pick the right metrics, you want to make sure that you're looking at what's happened previously and also looking ahead to see what is upcoming as well regarding metrics that will be achieved in the future. And so in that way, similar to qualitative and quantitative, you will be able to balance to get a full understanding of where the organization is, as well as ensuring that you're able to achieve your goals. And so for the next slide, we'd love to hear from you. And we have a quick case study here and a quick question. And so Optimum Corporation is a mid-sized manufacturing company. It's committed to improving diversity within its leadership team. Despite an overall diverse workforce, only 10% of leadership positions are held by women or employees from underrepresented groups. The company's goal is to increase leadership diversity to 25% over the next 2 years. To achieve this, they need to implement new strategies and monitor progress using both leading and lagging indicators. So want to get your thoughts. You can put this in the chat, or if one individual would like to come off of mute, would love to hear from you. What are some leading and lagging metrics they should consider? And this is also in your participant guide if you want to take a look at that. Jessica says, how many total women or underrepresented groups in the whole population? Absolutely. Yep, so that would be a good lagging indicator. Anybody else? Employee turnover, absolutely. That's a good one, Adrian. Retention of women and folks in underrepresented groups. Yep. Yep, that's a good one. Educational opportunities provided by the company. Yep, that's a really good one. And similar to that one, another good one could be like mentorship programs, right? The participation of mentorship programs from women or employees from underrepresented groups. So that's a good one. Anybody else? Let's see. Having quarterly check-ins with folks you are looking to promote to see what avenues or guidance they need. Yep, that would be a fantastic leading metric. That's good. Representation by level. Yes. Awesome. Okay. So you all are getting it. Yes. So all of that was great. So these are just some metrics that you'll want to consider, right, as you're thinking about how do I set clear metrics? How do I make sure that the metrics that I am setting for the organization are going to help us to achieve our goals? We can go to the next slide. And so here are some examples as you all think about what are those metrics that are going to be compelling for my organization. So I'll highlight just a few of them. So, and these are a mix of leading and lagging metrics, right? So we just talked about this increasing of diversity in leadership roles. So someone mentioned this, the percentage of women and underrepresented groups in leadership makes a lot of sense. And then also how many of these employees are participating in leadership development programs? How can we increase those? Why aren't there as many? Or if there are a good amount, like why are we not seeing that translate to the number of employees that are now in leadership roles, right? So there are ways to dig deeper from that. The next one, improving retention rates of underrepresented groups. So again, what are those retention rates? And then also, what are the number of stay interviews or feedback surveys that are conducted with diverse employees, right? And when you dig into that work, what are you finding within those interviews or feedback surveys? Are what has been found there have those findings been actioned? Has there been actually leadership taking a look at that and being willing to make changes with regards to what they're finding there? And then this often comes up quite a bit in organizations is pay equity across diverse groups. And so this can often be looked at through surveys is a great place to start, and then digging in a little bit deeper into that data. And so the pay gaps, you can slice it different ways by gender, by race, ethnicity, many different ways that you can slice that. And then a big piece is the percentage of pay adjustments made to correct identified disparities. And so digging into that to see if that has been done, has it been done for one group and not other groups? And so really the data will be really helpful for you all to take a look at that and see what's happening with regards to pay equity. And so this is the process that you should go through. Once you determine what your goals are, you want to determine what are your key performance indicators or KPIs. They should be a mix of leading and lagging indicators. And then in order to gather that data, you want to ensure that you're pulling quantitative data and you're pulling qualitative data. Okay, so that's the process of how you want to determine those key metrics. Our next slide just takes you through some sample metrics. We shared this in our last presentation and it seemed to really resonate. So we want to share it again. These sample metrics are fantastic to help you think outside the box in some ways of what are metrics that you can utilize to get you to your goals. One that I love, and we find that organizations and leaders are looking to this more and more as we're in a society where we have to be adaptable and innovative and always be thinking about ways to do things better, faster, and more economically is the creativity, innovation, and problem solving metrics. So are there ways that you can actually set metrics in your organization that will reward innovation, that will reward problem solving and reward creativity? Organizations tend to stunt over time when they're not looking at ways to innovate. And so this can be ways to capture your leadership's interest around metrics and DEI metrics specifically, when you look at some metrics that they may not have considered and that are also tied to your organizational goals. So this should be in your participant guide, but I think these metrics are super helpful for you to consider and see if you can utilize these within your organization. And we can go to the next slide. And so now you've got all this incredible data. You are excited to share this with your leadership, to share this with your board, to share this with your clients. And as I mentioned before, this is unfortunately the place where a lot of very well-meaning DEI strategists and those that are passionate about DEI and who work in it, unfortunately fall short. And the analogy that I would give is like, I can cook you this amazing 4-course meal, and then if I present it to you on the top of a garbage can, right, the little lid there, are you going to eat this 4-course meal? Absolutely not, right? It can be beautiful, it can smell fragrant, but if I have presented it to you in a less appetizing way, there's no way that you are going to accept it. And so we want to make sure that after you've done all this great work with data, that you present it in a way that is compelling, that is exciting, that gets your leadership interested in actually moving forward with what you've prepared for them. And so there's several different ways to do that. So firstly is the thought around data visualization. And so this thought is making data attractive, making data easy to understand. It makes data accessible, and it should really highlight key insights and trends. And so there are many organizations that do this really well. McKinsey and Company is one of those. We have an illustration here on the left-hand side that speaks to just the incredible amount of burnout that women faced in 2021 as we were in the midst of the pandemic. So they had a 10% increase between 2020 to 2021, as you can see on this illustration. And so the way that they have presented this is interesting. You can easily see the metrics and see where the issues lie. And so really thinking about how can I illustrate, how can I show and present my data in a way that is creative and that also very easily communicates to a listener what I'm trying to get across to them. Data framing is really getting clear on what a specific issue or decision is that you would like for your listener to walk away from, and framing almost like being able to provide a frame around that in which you put your data in. And so it really sets up the need for action and forward momentum. When you see data framing, it makes it clear of like, this is the data, and then we need to move from the data to this particular action. So being very clear when you show them the data of how you want them to move forward with it. And then another compelling way to think about the data is storytelling. We all love stories. That's why movies and even social media in a lot of ways is so successful and so compelling, because just our human brains love the idea of a story. And so it's really interesting to take data, which many people don't think of as being super exciting, right? And making sure that data is like housed within a story. And so often that's a way to make it a lot easier for people, especially those that may not be familiar or comfortable with data, to really weave data into a narrative. So it really shows the impact in a real way. And the great thing about stories, it brings forth emotion, it brings forth memory. And that's a great way too, that if you want people to help tell the story of whatever you are sharing, storytelling is a fantastic way to do that. And so we're doing all of this because at the end of the day, you need stakeholder buy-in, right? You need the buy-in to be able to get the finances, get the resources, even to get the thought leadership to be able to move this work forward. And so, one big way to get stakeholder buy-in too is just to have those early conversations and learn how do your stakeholders take in information? Like, what is really going to work for them? And so, again, going back to having the right team, it's important to have an individual that you can go to who's a champion for you, that can help you to present the data in a way that's going to be compelling and really help you to have the leadership team walk away feeling like I understand what's been presented to me and I feel ready to move forward with what we need to do, given the story, the visualization, or the framing that the data has provided. All right, so that was a lot of information. We are going to move into a Q&A portion. And so if there were questions in the chat, we have captured those and we will go through those. You can still continue to put questions in the chat, and you can also come off of mute and ask your question as well.
We've got about 10 minutes for Q&A, and so if you have any questions, this now will be the time.
I guess, hi, I have a question. For me, I am just curious. So, kind of like I guess mine's more specific, but like so our organization is largely women-based. The way that it works is that we're a nonprofit, we have volunteers, over 600 volunteers, but we only have 13 staff. And so measuring things like promotion, everyone here's title is director aside from two other people because we direct our volunteers that are under us. And so I guess how like promotion rates, career progression, like things like that, like what would you look at in that sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think to Yinka's earlier points, you really do have to customize your data based on your organization's goals. And so it doesn't sound like a goal of your organization is growth and development, because there really is pretty a flat organization. And so your goal is not to move people up through the ranks. Your goal may be, though, to retain people for a long time. So you would look at tenure. Are people staying in their roles for a long time? You could also look at employee satisfaction. If you all are doing an annual survey or a survey on some other cadence, how happy are people here? Are they happy with their benefits? Are they happy with their pay? Right? You can dive into different areas that is not necessarily tied to growth. And so, I think you really do just need to think about, well, what are our goals for our staff? And then you can deduce kind of what to track from there.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Great.
I see a question in the chat about if we have any strategies for gathering data on associates in a way that feels psychologically safe. And that is something that we actually do a lot of training on. And so, yes, it's very important that people feel like they are safe to provide the data to you, but also that they're not going to get any retribution, and they can feel honest with their experiences. So, the first thing is that you definitely want to make sure that you're communicating that whatever is being shared is confidential. Explain why you're collecting the data, how it's going to be used, and again, ensure that confidentiality. One thing that we do with a lot of our clients is we provide anonymous feedback forums. And so that could be a one-on-one with a consultant. So that would be hiring a third-party facilitator like ourselves in order to have a neutral party. Another way is through a Google form that's anonymous, that again, a third party goes through, or it is not associated with any name or email address so that folks can provide information in an anonymous way. And it's really important to create those feedback channels and follow up on what is being shared. And so being able to do that in a psychologically safe way, sharing the findings, but in a way that it can't be tied back to anybody, and then encouraging people to be open as often as possible. And I'll let Ava add to that if she has any input.
Yeah, no, you covered everything. The only thing I would add is usually leaning on a third party, I'm like, is really helpful in those senses. If you can get a third party to collect that data, I think that gives a lot of employees more comfort knowing that no one in the company is directly going to see their information, that this third party company can anonymize the data before it gets shared back. They can pull the insights, right? And so I think the distance from leadership creates more comfort if there is high distrust in the organization. And then I see another question in the chat. Do you have any strategies for gathering? Oh, sorry, that's the one you just heard from Natalia. Is there a scale framework that you suggest to measure overall DEI progress? Almost something that allows you to indicate an overall score that you can help push progress over time. So there are many frameworks, we'll call them continuums, that you can use. We have developed one internally so that we can see how our clients are progressing against their goals. But again, I don't want to sound like a broken record. It does depend on what are the goals of your organization. And the framework that we have, which we don't always use because the goal is not always to move along in your equity journey. But when that is applicable, we use that continuum. There's another continuum that I'll drop in the chat that I do also refer to at times, and there are many others. But again, you need to find a framework or continuum that aligns with your intended destination, because otherwise there's no sense in measuring yourself against a space that you don't want to head to. And so I think you really need to focus on finding a framework that aligns with your values, aligns with your goals as an organization, and then you can use that. I will caveat that the score concept is a little bit hard for me to accept because this work is a lifelong journey. There really is no point in which we will arrive or that we will reach 100%, because the truth is, the more we learn, actually, the more we know we need to do, and that the work will never stop happening. The learning will never stop happening. And so while you can continue to make progress, it's important to measure your progress against where you've been versus like this end destination where I'm going to get 100%, we're going to get an A, because that is unlikely to happen, in my personal opinion. Anything the team would add there? Or we can go on to the next question.
Nothing to add there, Ava. I see a few questions in the chat around tools for breaking down the qualitative data, and I see some people have offered some suggestions there. ChatGPT can definitely help to analyze some of that data. Other folks have used a tool called NVivo, which I've never heard of, but would definitely welcome more suggestions for tools there as well. And I see a question around platforms and systems that are used to identify KPIs. Digital points in time, is it a CRM? Ava, what is your background here? I don't have an answer to that, so I'm going to put that one to you.
Sorry, we're talking about the question from, I don't want to mispronounce, Jamalia. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Yes, this is Jamali for shares. Yeah, I was curious what is the most kind of effective system. I was thinking of CRM, where if there's a question about kind of where we sit on on the kind of where we sit on how effective we are with the relative KPI, how we're measuring it if someone asks us at that point in time. So digitally, so if someone asks us how we're doing with equity in terms of our hiring process. DRMs tend to track some of the HR hirings, and you can kind of track some of the demographic data in there. So I was just thinking a CRM would be able to house a lot of that information where you could identify it at real points in time. But if that's not the case, are there other systems, something that kind of is attached to a CRM that you would advise that would kind of house some of that information to kind of track where you are with your KPIs?
Yeah, so it really depends on how technically savvy your organization is. I've worked with large institutions that still use paper, in which case the suggestions I'm about to say would not work for them. Their first step is to get electronic. And so depending on where you're starting from, it will determine how far you have to go. What the most sophisticated kind of dashboard tool is kind of what it sounds like you're talking about that I've seen. You can create totally custom ones if you have a lot of money, I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars, to create these dashboards that sit on top of your individual systems. Most organizations use more than one system. And so you might be able to get your HR data out of one place, but your customer data may be in another place, your financial data may be in another place. And so they get these platforms that kind of pull the data from all of those platforms. And some of the most popular are Power BI, Tableau are like two of the biggest ones. There are some other products that do the same exact thing that that people use. It may depend on what kind of contracts your organization already has. And I'm saying that for like large institutions, governments, like there are these contracts that exist for technology companies, and you might just need to use what you have available due to the licensing requirements and restrictions. So Power BI, Tableau is really sophisticated. If you're on an earlier technology phase, Excel is perfect. You have to just manually update that on a regular cadence. And I can tell you, we've used all of, the whole spectrum. The most important thing about a dashboard is that you're using it and that it's being updated. And you may need to start small and then build up to something larger, but you have to start somewhere.
Thanks for answering that, Ava, because I'm not that kind of person, so I appreciate it. You're our in-house expert on those systems. Do we have time for one more question? I just want to do a time check.
Actually, I think, oh, sorry. I think we do have to transition to the next section, but we'll collect all of the questions that were asked here and we can respond to those in our recap email.
Great, thanks, Ava. So our next portion of our time together today is some reflection. We're gonna go into breakout groups in just a few minutes. But first, before we dive back in, I want to quickly highlight something that aligns perfectly with today's session on measuring DEI impact. If you're here, you're clearly committed to creating measurable change, and that's exactly what the Inclusive Leadership Institute, or ILI, is all about. So this is one of our new offerings where you can gain personalized guidance from DEI experts who can help you tackle some of the specific challenges that you might be facing around metrics and impact. But it's more importantly a community. It's a community of DEI leaders who are navigating similar journeys and spaces. It's a place where you can come and share your insights and learn from others' experiences, as well as build strategies together. So it's a really important and powerful community that you can join to sustain and amplify your DEI work. And so we are dropping a link in the chat if you want more information on ILI, on some of the resources that you would get from joining, things like courses and templates and tools. And so it's really everything that you need to create, measure, and communicate DEI impact within your organization. So please follow that link and feel free to ask any questions that you might have in the chat. And next slide, we are going to go into breakout groups. So we have 3 different breakout groups. Each breakout group will have an assigned facilitator, myself, Ava, and Yinka, and you'll be automatically assigned to a room. So we have a case study that you will be presented with, and we'll be answering the following questions in our breakout groups. Firstly, we'll try to identify 3 to 4 KPIs that we can use moving forward to measure the effectiveness of the DEI initiatives at Community Signal. And then secondly, we will be trying to discuss how you would be communicating the metrics and next steps to different stakeholders, what strategies you'll be using. And if you need to download the participant guide, that's where you can have a space for note taking, as well as the case study that you can read to yourself. So please download that. It's in the chat, it's in PDF form. And yeah, we can go to the next slide, which is the case study. And I believe the breakout groups will be open. You'll be automatically assigned, so you can join in, and we'll start tackling this case study together. Any questions before we head into breakout groups?
think we're all back now. Never enough time in breakout rooms. I can certainly say that for sure. Our conversation, we're just getting juicy on answering the second question. So, but yeah, I'll hand it over to Gabrielle. You closing us out?
I think so, but my screen is going a little bit haywire right now. But thank you all for joining us for some really great conversation, a lot of really great actions that I hope will come from this, that you can all take it to your organizations. And we will be seeing you at the next master class. Please use the link that will be shared in the chat to register. The next topic is empowering teams, inclusive culture for employee well-being, and that will be taking place in 2025. I can't believe that we're coming on to that year already. Thursday, February 6th. We hope to see you there. And thank you so much for joining today. I believe, do we have a survey? Yes, thank you.